Hey everyone, this is my review of the new Toro Power Max HD two-stage snowblower. This model specifically is the 1432. This is currently the largest two-stage snowblower that Toro makes. For the 2018 to 2019 winter, they've made some very significant changes to this machine. They basically listened to the recommendations of their customers and applied it to this new model. I'll talk about all the changes that they've made, as well as compare it to the outgoing model, which the largest one they used to make was a 1028 commercial spec. So I'll start in the front of the machine. The housing on the front of these new units is now set back at an angle as opposed to being dead vertical. The reason they did this was people were complaining when you were going through very deep snow, especially when you were using the drift cutters, the snow would tend to land on top of the housing and roll back in front of the tires. So by setting this back, if you're going through really deep snow and the snow is falling down in front of the machine, it's more likely to go into the impellers and the auger and get processed through it as opposed to falling behind it. Commercial units from the factory come standard with drift cutters. Non-commercial units, it is available as an accessory. The commercial units also come standard with cast iron skids. The non-commercial units will come with a heavy-duty stamped steel, which is also very strong. On the front of the machine, you still have the 14-inch auger. However, for the new model year, the augers have gotten considerably more aggressive. They are now serrated and they have all these flanges on them that are able to better grab snow. It still has sealed bearings on both sides, and the system is strong enough where it does not require a center support. The transmission has gotten considerably larger than last year's. It is one big piece of cast aluminum that should be very strong, and it's reinforced. What's also nice that they did was the transmission is now top loaded. So traditionally the transmissions are sandwiched together and you would have to worry about the oil leaking from the center seam. With this being top loaded in one piece, now that's one less leak point that you have to worry about. On the back, the impeller is a 14-inch impeller. It's bigger than last year's, and the cups on the impeller are now shaped, they're rounded off kind of like a shovel, and they are very large. I can comfortably fit my hand in there. By having them curved like a shovel, they are better able to grab and hold the snow as they throw it out of the machine, and the throwing distances are significantly higher than they were before. I believe some of these machines will get about 60 feet of throwing distance. Obviously that depends on how much snow and how wet or light the snow is. And then on the bottom of the machine in the housing, you have a drain, so as the snow melts in the machine, it'll be able to just drain out rather than pooling there. In regards to the ACS, or anti-clogging system, this is Toro's the only company that does a system like this. They basically have this extra room on the side here, so if the system gets overwhelmed with snow, it's able to recycle it to the side and let the impeller sort of catch up for a second, and then it gets brought back into the impeller and thrown out. For the new model year, they added this little flange here to help better keep the snow in the ACS rather than having it get thrown out like a lot of other machines. When they get overwhelmed, they'll tend to throw the snow back out of the machine. These usually will not do that because of the anti-clogging system. As far as the housing for the ACS, it is now all metal. Last year, the housing was a poly material, which is basically a very heavy-duty plastic, and they bolted it. It is now all metal, and it's all one molded and welded piece to the housing itself, so it's a much, much stronger setup. They also did the same for the chute. The chute is now all metal instead of being poly like on last year's models, and now you have 2 pivot points instead of 1, so now you get a much smoother transition as the snow comes up the chute, and you're able to get a much better throwing distance because of that. The headlights are now much further forward, and they are LED as opposed to being halogen. They used to be set back a little bit further. Having them up front puts the light further ahead of the machine and creates less shadows. I modified mine slightly. I put this 4-inch piece of square tubing on here. I did that mainly because in the stock position, the headlight sits a little bit lower, and it creates a little bit of a shadow right in front of the housing. So by picking it up a little bit, it helps eliminate that shadow and make it much smaller. Since the machines typically are moving so slow, you don't need to see very far in front, but you need to see right in front of the machine. All the units still retain the same 16-inch tires. However, the new models, they're a little bit narrower than they used to be, which helps you better get down to the pavement when you're going through especially very, very deep snow. And you also still retain these very deep lugs on the tires themselves. Toro is offering all new engines for the upcoming model year. They offer a bunch of new displacements as well. All the engines come standard with a 120 volt electric start. They don't come with a plug or a extension cord anymore, but you just have your standard 3-prong extension cord, 120 volts. You just push the button and it'll start the machine. Before, the largest engine size available was 302 cc. It's now 420, and they also have a wider range of engine displacements available. The setup is the same basically as what it was from the previous year. Fuel tanks obviously on the top. The fuel tank size is relative to the engine displacement, so the bigger the engine gets, the bigger the fuel tank gets. With this being the 420 cc, which is the biggest, the largest fuel tank that comes with this is 4.8 quarts, so pretty big, a little bit over a gallon. You should be able to get a few hours out of that. On top is your oil fill that's also a dipstick. Obviously, all your engine controls are on the back of the machine. You have your throttle control, and stop is one. Your fuel cut. You have a safety key so that if you have to worry about kids or anybody using the machine, you can take that out and it obviously won't start. You have your primer and then your choke. They also put a larger handle on this. People were complaining with a gloved hand, it was sometimes hard to grab the handle. Now it's considerably larger, so even someone with very large hands that has a glove on can comfortably get their hand around that to pull start it. The commercial units have these very, very large, heavy-duty rectangular handles on them. The non-commercial units have a mandrel bent, reinforced, like tubing type handle, which is also very, very strong. One thing I like that Toro does that not a lot of other manufacturers do is they put their clean out tools on the back of the machine. Everybody else puts theirs on the front. Now, it's convenient to have them on the front, but the problem is the front of the machine is typically what gets loaded with snow. So if you have it on the front, it's always pretty much going to be getting covered in snow. On these commercial units, they tuck it back here where it's nice and protected, right behind the handle. On the non-commercial units with the other handles, they will put them across. So it's always in the back, it's out of the way. It doesn't get covered in snow when you are not using it. All right, from the driver's position, they've also made quite a few changes. They've added some reinforcement here on the dash on the back. The quick stick is now physically larger, and they've strengthened it up. If you're not familiar with Toro's quick stick system, this is basically a single control to move the chute around. Basically, you just push down this blue tab to unlock it, and you can rotate the chutes both side to side and up and down with this quick stick. So the idea is you're able to move the chute any direction you need to, and you can drive the machine with two hands without having to stop. So it makes it a little bit more productive. On your left side here is your transmission engagement, your drive control, and on the right side is your auger engagement. If you engage the auger and the transmission, really in any order, doesn't really matter which one you do it, the auger handle will stay down when the drive is engaged, so you can leave the drive engaged with your left hand, and you can move the quick stick with your right hand. So it's able to, like I said, you're a lot more fluid. You're able to keep going with the machine. You don't have to stop and move it. Move the quick stick. Most of the Power Max HDs come with hand warmers. I added this tack on just for maintenance reasons, just to keep an idea of the amount of hours that I'm putting on the machine. Pretty simple to install if you want to do an aftermarket one. Toro doesn't do hour meter standard on their machines. And then we're getting into the transmission. You have 6 forward speeds and 2 reverse. Now, obviously, because this is it doesn't technically have gears, but because it has separate speeds, this means that this is not a hydrostatic transmission. Toro does not do hydrostatic transmissions on any of their snowblowers whatsoever. Now, this is a little bit of a topic for debate. Now, this is what is called a friction disc transmission. It basically has 2 main discs that make contact with each other. A friction disc drive is a very old style system, but with it being old, That means it's been around for a very long time. It has proven itself over and over again, and it's been refined basically to the point of perfection. From everything I've read, Toro hydrostatic drives are Toro friction disc drives are extremely reliable. They have been around for a very long time. They have basically perfected them, and they require virtually zero maintenance at all. So there's only really one part that wears down on friction disc, and that's what's called the tire, and they are relatively cheap and easy to replace if you actually do wear it down, which would take you a very long time. With hydrostatics, some people prefer them because there is no defined speed. You can really make the machine go, you can really dial it into any speed specifically that you want. But they are a lot more expensive, hydrostatics. They are very technical, and then you also have to worry about things like changing the fluid. There's a possibility for them to develop leaks because it is hydraulically controlled as opposed to mechanically controlled. So they are very nice hydrostatics, but it's expensive and they do require more upkeep, and there is more of a potential for issues, whereas a friction disc like this is very, very simple, and there's really no parts to wear out. So everything I've read on Toro's friction disc systems, they are super, super reliable, and basically you'll never really have to maintain it. You have to put a tremendous amount of hours on these things to wear these transmissions out, and they are very, very, very well built. So, and then on the bottom, basically this is considered power steering on this machine. You basically pull on one of the individual levers to unlock the wheels to make it turn. Some of their entry-level Power Max HD machines have what's called auto steer, where it's basically a little mechanical differential that unlocks when you turn, so you don't have to deal with the levers on the bottom, and it turns with a little bit less effort. This machine is surprisingly, for being a machine that weighs over 300 pounds, it is very easy to maneuver. When you pull these levers back to disengage each wheel to turn it, it's very smooth. It requires virtually zero effort from the operator to do it. And this machine, having the 6 forward speeds, when you need to just transport it around, it's still very quick. You can comfortably move it at a walking pace, and then obviously you can put it down to a low speed if you're going through some really heavy snow. I haven't had a significant enough snow yet to use this thing, but once I do and I can get some really deep snow, I'll try to get a video of me going through, hopefully something high enough where I can almost get to the top of the housing to see how well this thing performs, this being the largest model. I believe it's rated at 2,600 pounds of snow a minute, so that's quite a bit of snow, and even the ones that are slightly below this thing can still do over 2,000 pounds of snow a minute, so that's quite a bit of snow. So I'm very curious to see how well this thing handles once the snow finally does come, because I'm just getting into December here, and the snow really hasn't been anything significant enough to use it yet, but I'll keep everyone updated, and I'll try to get a video of me doing some snow removal. So hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching.